Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Last time we talked to you about publishing, and you might be starting to research what your options are. You need to be doing that while you're still writing. Don't let it take over your life, but start to think about which way are you going to go. If you're going indie, then the rest of this program is just for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the stages of editing, proofreading, and connecting with the right professionals. And Tracy is going to lead the way.
Thanks, Lynn. First of all, as we mentioned in session one, actually, as we were talking about an editorial assessment. So when you've got your full manuscript and you've done your own self-editing, you might want to have an editorial assessment done, which will feature in-depth feedback on the plot, the character, the structure, and the style. It doesn't mean the person that you get to do that assessment will actually make any changes. They're there to actually give you feedback. Would you like to elaborate on what happened with your experience, Lynn?
Well, I had two different ones, actually. In my first book, I hired someone from an association, from the Canadian Authors Association. They have a list of editors. I thought, do I even want to try this? I sent it off. I found one in my genre. And she was critical in helping me learn to write scenes. I didn't know how to write scenes properly before that, so that when people are reading the book, they actually feel as if they're right there with you. It was exceptional in moving me forward. And the last time I did an editor's manuscript is what they called it over here. And it was the same type of overall feedback. You need to think about your tenses. I might give you some recommendations on the flow of your story. It's not getting into the details of the content, but both were very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You definitely can improve your flow of your story, can't you, with an editorial assessment. So once you've got your full manuscript and you're really happy with it, then you really get onto the structural editing, or what can be called a developmental edit. And during this stage, it's essential to employ a professional editor. Now, particularly with nonfiction, a good editor will thoroughly assess the entire manuscript. They'll ensure that there's consistency in the voice. They'll fix holes in the plot. And during this stage, there may be a lot of words that are actually cut from your manuscript, or even paragraphs rearranged, or even suggestions for, parts of a chapter to be changed around as well. So it's very important at this point for new and inexperienced authors to accept the feedback at this stage. And it can sometimes be quite confronting because they do change a lot, but essentially that story will remain the same, right? And sometimes a developmental edit for a non-fiction book will ensure that any quotes that you use are completely substantiated and are correct and attributed to the right people. If there's any factual information that is included in the book or your manuscript, then you have to make sure that it is fully substantiated and there's references as well. So the developmental edit or structural edit is extremely important. Of course, if you don't agree with everything that your editor suggests, especially if you're an independent author, you can choose whether to accept those changes or not. But do bear in mind that they understand the industry. They are a professional and they do understand your genre and your audience. Having a developmental edit is essential, and it's a massive learning journey for every new author. So moving on from that, you will then require a copy edit, which is sometimes called a content edit or a line edit. And basically what that is a fine tuning of your book. So the copy editor will assess the grammar, the sentence structure, and all inconsistencies in voice and tone as well. They'll turn your book into its most readable format and will actually give it that real professional feel that you're looking for. So it turns your book into just an independent published book into a highly professional book that's well written and easy to read. So if particularly for nonfiction, you can sometimes miss out the developmental or structural edit, but I would recommend that you never ever miss out on the copy or the content edit. Very important to have that. Do you want to add anything there, Lynn?
It's just so critical. And I've made mistakes in both of my books, and made changes after the formal editing process, all the way down at the end. And so if you look on page 37 of my most recent book, there's a typo. So it's pretty important, because I think, Tracy, you said it in a previous session. You put your eyes on your book and your writing so many times that it does become a blur. And even if you have 2, 3, 4 people read it, if you continue to make changes right to the point where you're, you think you're finished, there's going to be mistakes. So just be very careful, be very cautious about how you choose to do that. Make sure that you're done. You're not going to go back and, oh, I have another idea. I'd like to add something else, those kinds
Yeah,
of things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So once you've had all your editing done, your professional editing, it's still really very important to have it professionally proofread. So I guess you're thinking, well, there's so many people that have looked at my book, and I've had it edited and edited and edited again, and I've self-edited myself. But to put it into perspective, the Encyclopedia Britannica says that our eyes take in 11 million bits of information every second, but our brain only processes 50 bits of information. And I've heard other statistics similar to that, but the fact is the brain is filtering out information. And when you've read something even just 2 or 3 times, particularly if you're new to sort of proofreading or editing, then the brain actually sees what you've seen before. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but it's absolutely true for all editors and proofreaders. I myself am a copy and content editor and a proofreader, and I will only ever do 2 runs of a manuscript, because I know that the next time I look at it, I'm going to see what I saw before. So never miss out on the proofread. As many people, always get as many people as you can to look at it. There will always be mistakes. And it's funny, because a lot of people rely on spell check. I've got Word, I've got spell check, it'll be fine. It really won't. It really won't. So always make sure, above all else, that you get a professional proofread.
Now, Tracy,
Sure.
as a professional editor, what would you say is the most common thing that you need to address when you're working with a client?
Actually, it's usually consistency in tone, and sometimes in third person, first person. Sometimes people slip in and out of those sort of out of the tenses, really. So yeah, definitely, it's something that I look out for, especially. Yes, and plurals. Yeah. people put a lot of S's on things when they don't need to. Funnily enough. It's a job that I really enjoy doing, and yeah, picking up just to add that extra touch to it, to a good manuscript. It's great.
So I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, well, where do I find these people? Where do I find editors? Where do I find people to help me proofread? So Tracy and I are about to share some resources with you. Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I like platforms like Fiverr and Readsy, and also there's some very professional bodies out there. There's this international bodies of professional editors. It's a Google job, definitely. You can Google find an editor, and you'll find a massive selection. So it can be a little bit overwhelming. But on platforms like Readsy and Fiverr, you've got people that have shown their work, that can show their work. They've shown that they've edited 10 different books in the same genre as yours, and they've actually got recommendations. So you can actually see quite clearly some of the best editors that are there. But when you do pick 2 or 3, always have a conversation with them. Always make sure that you are on the same page with them. And personality-wise, you want to be able to deal with somebody that you can actually enjoy talking to and enjoy working with. So always, even if you've picked 2 or 3 people that are highly recommended from those platforms, then, you know, make sure you talk to them first and get to know them, really.
Get to know them, get to know their processes, their timelines, because as an author, we can guarantee you that the timeline that you think will happen will likely not be happening, because they're not only working with you and your book and your manuscript, they're working with others as well at the same time. I also belong to several Facebook groups. So if you're writing a nonfiction, maybe you're writing women's fiction, you can look for those types of groups, and very often you'll find freelance editors within them. And Twitter, you can do a search as well. But once again, you're not on Fiverr. I believe the rating, there's actually a rating out of 5, 4.8, 4.9, and you can actually see how many ratings there have been. You're not going to find that on Facebook groups or on Twitter. So really it is about finding someone you can connect with, as Tracy said, that gets what you're trying to convey and can help you do so in a much more professional way by using their expertise.
That's right. I have an account on Fiverr, mostly for my copywriting, actually. But you can see at a glance, you know, there's 30 or 40 different recommendations from people, and it's a really good idea to sort of research and read those recommendations to see if they're just, you know, it's just a quick thank you, or whether they actually really appreciate the work that was done. So yeah, so there's a lot of information there.
We hope today's session has been helpful to you as you move forward to publishing your first book. Now, as always, we're providing a PDF for you with all of the highlights of today's session, and you're about to do a self-assessment. We're now 3 sessions in, as well as the introduction. Check yourself, see what your understanding is, write down what you're not really clear on, and go back, maybe rewatch, re-listen, or do your own research if you're not clear on what we've covered so far, because we're moving on to session 4. We'll see you next time, everyone.
See you next time.